being fiscally conservative and socially liberal.
Taxation is theft.
I do not believe I know what's best for other people.
As a conservative, when I think of harm, I don't merely look at a snapshot of an individual action. Here's the meth, give me the money. What I do is I press play and I zoom out. And I ask myself, over time and across the country, is this sustainable? And if it isn't, and it most definitely isn't in the case of hard drugs, then I turn my attention to the very hard question of figuring out, well, what should we do about it?
I'm of the position that activities that harm yourself and harm others are and must be legal. It's absolutely essential. You should not cheat on your spouse. You should keep your promises to your friends. You shouldn't feed your children too much junk food. And you shouldn't watch too much TV. You shouldn't smoke too much. You shouldn't drink too much. But I want all those activities to be legal. I don't view the government as a great moral arbiter, and I don't believe that if people cheat on their spouse or eat too much junk food, that the state is the tool that we should reach to in order to solve problems. I'm not pretending that if we legalize all drugs that we wouldn't have problems. We would have problems. Some people would hurt themselves and others. That's absolutely true. But I think David made a very good argument for the prohibition of alcohol, which is easily one of the most deadly drugs around that does ruin lives and does cause a little bit of, or some portion of crime. Only look at drunk driving and assaults. Smoking is harmful, but we allow it. And I think that we should keep in mind that the barrier for government entry into our lives should be very, very high. We have a lot of non-government institutions, charities, churches, things like that are, turns out, much better positioned to help people who have problems when they harm themselves or others. When we look at the Venn diagram of activities that are illegal and activities that are harmful, there's actually very little overlap. We might be able to agree on murder and assault and a few other things, but there are plenty of harmful activities that are legal, and that, by the way, there are a lot of illegal activities that are relatively harmless, although not without harm. I'll point out that when we have morals, we shouldn't look to the government. I'm sure there might be people in the room who view the Ten Commandments as a great moral guide, and I may count myself among them. But I'm very thankful that we live in a country where if we try to implement them into law, 7 of the 10 commandments are unconstitutional. We don't view the government as necessarily a moral arbiter, and I think that's a good thing.
Well, you said that in America we shouldn't smoke too much. I think you haven't been here long enough and you still have your British ways. In America, you're allowed to do a hell of a lot of things, but smoking is most emphatically not one of them. So Americans are unbelievably intolerant of smoking, especially in the big cities. I don't know how it is down here in Florida. You raised the point of prohibition. I think it should have been addressed to Ryan. It's the progressives who banned alcohol, not the conservatives at the turn of the century. Although I will readily concede, if it got completely out of control and it threatened the continued existence of the United States of America, I wouldn't rule it out. I wouldn't want it imposed by judicial fiat. I wouldn't want a president to wake up one morning and say, okay, executive order. But why would we prima facie say it is fundamentally inconceivable to think of a set of circumstances under which rampant, widespread alcoholism, with babies being born deformed because their mothers were drinking themselves into a stupor while they were pregnant, why couldn't this be elevated to a common political concern that may be legislated? I'd prefer we not get there. I am very much on the libertarian side of things in terms of being suspicious of government involvement, being well aware of the endless problems of regulatory capture, of special interest captures. You can have the best of intentions in the world. You come to Washington, D.C., they come out of the woodworks to embed into your laws their carve-outs and their demands. That said, I don't see why, as a principle, which is what we're discussing here tonight, not particular policies. So to be clear, you don't go back saying there was a crazy guy with a funny accent from the Heritage Foundation who wants to ban booze. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I can perfectly imagine a set of conditions under which, yes, I would consider banning alcohol in America if it threatened the continued existence of the country. And I think you'd have to be crazy to say that in the name of liberty, you'd rather America disappear than ban a particular substance.
Right, yeah, I want to state emphatically that I don't believe the legalization of heroin and meth is a threat to the existence of the United States. I don't, now, maybe one day you can imagine a drug that potentially it would, but that's not my position. I'm also of the opinion that a lot of the horrors that David highlighted are actually a direct result of prohibition. If you're worried about crime, and there is a lot of crime associated with drugs, but it's precisely because it's illegal. When was the last time Budweiser and Coors had a shootout over their brewery, right? In legal markets, you have courts. You have problems with each other, you go to court, you don't pull out guns. I'm happy to press pause and to zoom out, but I see a country that has spent more than $1 trillion on the war on drugs, that conducts dozens of SWAT raids every day, and has the highest incarceration rate in the world. So I'll press play with legalization assumed and think the world won't be perfect, but it'll probably be better. I want to conclude by pointing out that it's not true to claim that our current war on drugs has anything to do with harm. The substances that are prohibited, the motivation was not anything to do with harm. And one of the best examples of this, I think, is a quote from a former Nixon counsel, some of you will know, John Ehrlichman, who gave an interview with Harper's where he said bluntly, "We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and the blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities." I'm not saying that David, of course, adheres to all of that, but we should be aware that when we're talking about prohibited substances, harm is very rarely the reason that people are going for it. There's a whole book to be written on the history of drug prohibition and race, but that will be for another time.